What's up, everybody? Welcome into Group Chat Football Live. This is our page, Group Chat Sports. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And this is our national college football show. We talk everything from transfers, coaching moves, players standing out in practice, which is what we're going to start with today. I'm Peter. That's D Money. And we're going to start in Alabama. We don't know who's going to be their quarterback just yet, D, but potentially someone who's separating himself from the pack right now. Ty Simpson. Looks like him and Isaiah Horton, transfer from Miami, are starting to develop a really nice connection there.
This is something, Pete, you reported way back in the day when Isaiah Horton first jumped in the transfer portal for the Miami Hurricanes. Obviously, we're plugged in with that particular program. But you said that you were hearing, knowing people connected to Horton, that part of the reason why he's looking at Alabama was because he has such a great relationship with Ty Simpson going back to Tennessee. So Ty Simpson from Martin, Tennessee, Isaiah Horton from Murfreesboro. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Murfreesboro, Tennessee. That's actually where Middle Tennessee State is, which I'm actually familiar with as well. Signed a player out of there. So I've been to Murfreesboro about 3 or 4 times, man.
So they're buddies, and that connection is starting to show itself on the football field. First scrimmage, 3 touchdowns for Ty Simpson, 2 of them coming from Isaiah Horton. Got a little video there too, which they put out where you could see Isaiah Horton wearing that number 1, separating from the defensive backs. And this is a guy I've watched, again, since he first landed here. We're based in Miami, in Coral Gables, watching him at practice. The developmental track of Isaiah Horton has been something to watch. Came into Miami, basketball player over in Tennessee. Of course, he played football as well, but it wasn't like he was a finished product, a low 4-star player. His first year, plays a little bit, doesn't do anything particularly crazy. Second year has a long catch against Texas A&M, but still developing. Then last year, puts on weight right when me and Pete saw him in spring. So this guy looked like a different player, really worked his body into something that looked like an NFL player, ended up having a breakout season for the Canes, was Cam Ward's most reliable option as far as, aside from Xavier Restrepo, who's an All-American. Really, Horton was the guy he looked to on those in-breaking routes, on those slants, on those contested catch situations to use his strong body. Not the type that's going to be going up over guys and mossing them, but somebody who knows how to use his body, also has some underrated speed and big playability, can run post, as you saw against Texas A&M in 2023. So he is somebody with a lot of talent, and it sounds like in Alabama, obviously Ryan Williams is a star of the show. Jeremy Bernard, you got guys there, but Horton is starting to announce his presence with a quarterback that's very familiar with him.
Yeah, and it looked like from that clip, obviously a limited clip there, but it looked like he was getting over the top of the defense there. So, like you said, we saw it at Miami against Texas A&M in that play a couple years ago, but was used more as that chain mover, red zone threat for Miami this season. It'll be interesting to see how his skill set is used over there.
Yeah, and you look at the story from Tuscaloosa paper about kind of Horton and Simpson linking up. Simpson reached out to Horton and said, and this is to the Tuscaloosa News, he said, "Hey, Alabama, hit me up. What do you think?" And Simpson told him, "You're crazy if you don't come and visit and come here. This offense is built for guys like you." Seems like that advice has paid off. Switching this to Simpson for a second, we broke down this quarterback battle. I thought Keelan Russell was going to have a chance here just because, he is on paper, the future of the program. These are all multiple eligibility guys. So if he's the guy that you believe in going forward, you might want to get him in early, because if he's sitting behind a multi-year eligibility guy, you don't know if he's going to stay through the process. But of course, Alabama's a program. You're not always building for the future. You got to win now. The expectation is to win now every single year. So Ty Simpson, being the more experienced players further along, he's going to be the starter. And I think what you're seeing is the experience factor. He's got now second year in that DeBoer offense. You got Ryan Grubb coming back to link up with DeBoer. So it's an interesting fit. What jumped out to me always with Simpson is what you're seeing here in this high school highlights, the athletic ability. You saw that even in his limited time at Alabama, playing in some of these blowout games. This is a guy that can move. This guy was a playmaker. He's not like a Jalen Milroe runner, but in terms of like lateral movement and making plays to throw, he brings a lot to the table there. And I think that's really what to me, separates him from an Austin Mack, who's a taller player, more of a pocket passer. Keelan Russell can do some of the same things, but Simpson can do it with a little more experience and size on him too, having worked out in a college weight room for a couple of years.
Yeah, he seems like the most well-rounded of the options at this point. Would still expect Russell to be involved somehow, and Austin Mack. We'll see what happens here with him, but definitely seems like Simpson's separating himself.
Coach's son too, so the IQ is there. Even though you see the playmaking, the improvisation, it's not like he's someone who doesn't have that football IQ and that command. So it'll be interesting to see also as the running element as we see here. But that was what struck me from the scrimmage for Alabama. We're going to see more and more coming out of camp was just, hey, this Tennessee connection, which we had heard about, which Pete had heard about several months ago, you're now seeing it on the field. I think Alabama, when you really add up their receiving core, and if Horton is what I think he's going to be for Alabama, you were talking to, in my opinion, about the best wide receiver group in the country at Alabama, with Ryan Williams as an absolute premier, top 3 at worst wide receiver in the country. Jeremy Bernard, a reliable veteran, and then Horton, another reliable veteran who I think has more room to improve and could be, going from like a day 3 type NFL pick to potentially a day 2 type NFL pick with continued development at Alabama.
Some significant recruiting news this morning if you're an Ohio State Buckeyes fan, and they just keep it rolling as the top-rated safety in the country on the 247 Sports composite rankings. Blaine Bradford has committed to the Buckeyes. This is a huge one. I mean, again, keeping it rolling at that position. And to me, as a guy who's 23rd rated overall, the significance is where you're getting him from, which is Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Yeah, look, sometimes those guys will leave the state, right? You look at Dylan Sampson, who was just unbelievable for Tennessee this year at running back, now in the NFL draft. He's a Baton Rouge kid. So you do see these guys leave sometime, but it's not something that typically happens for LSU. They're so good in state. And to lose a safety to Ohio State from Baton Rouge, that's a tough pill to swallow for LSU fans. But if you're an Ohio State fan, you are feeling absolutely terrific. You wanted 3 safeties in this class. Ryan Day, Matt Patricia, getting this one done. Also, Coach Guerrieri, the safeties coach. So very, very big move. You got Caleb Downs. You need another impact player. You saw the impact that Caleb Downs had on this team in their run to the championship. So this is a tremendous addition. If you're comparing the two, I think from a run defense standpoint, Bradford is very similar to Caleb Downs, 6'1", 207, really great just ability to see it and attack. His closing speed, his confidence. He's a physical player as well. But that jumps out to me, just the fact that he's already a safety and he has that vision. You see him in coverage here. I'm not sure if just total athlete is what you have with Caleb Downs as far as like returning punts for touchdowns at the college level. I'm not sure that Bradford has that. But as far as being a tone setter, as far as having speed, you saw how big Ransom was to this run. I think Bradford can give you some of that from just a physicality, tone setting, urgency standpoint, on top of having, very good size at 207 pounds for a high school safety and very good closing speed as well. But I think more of a box player. He's not so limited that he's not going to be a safety for you. He'll be a safety, but I think more of a box safety, a premium high-end 5-star type box safety that really helps out against some of these running games in the Big Ten, which, you're going against Michigan, you're going against Penn State, you're going against Oregon, you're going against teams that want to run the ball and then want to throw over the middle. And this guy can set the tone in both of those areas.
Yeah, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. He plays like a linebacker, and that's no slight to him. But when you watch certain guys play and you talk about certain positions, the linebacker mentality, that's something that you talk about a lot. And we understand some of these safeties play near the line of scrimmage, are asked to play a lot, in run support. But a lot of times it's just like they're doing that because that's part of that's just a part of their job, not because it's legitimately what they want to do. And this is a guy that, boom, once he locks in on the ball carrier, he turns into a linebacker. He's going to make that tackle. And I think that is what makes him such a special player here potentially. You see the burst though, right, in the short areas. I don't know if some of this tape looks like it's a little bit sped up, but he does have really good short area quicks as well.
quick trigger, right? When you're a safety, it's not about your pure time speed. We've seen a lot of safeties that are not fast have success in the NFL and in college. It's about how fast do you play, how fast do you identify what's in front of you, and how fast do you react to that. And I think that's what you see with him, particularly going downhill, is that quick trigger. You see him there, boom, over the middle, laying down the law a little bit, got a flag. That might happen a little bit. But you see here on special teams, which you want to see some of your 5-star type players making plays on special teams. But I think the signature for Blaine Bradford, if you're an Ohio State fan, is the ability to trust his eyes, see what's happening downfield, quick trigger downhill, or when he sees it, and then having the closing speed to get there in a hurry, and the size and the striking ability to deliver a big hit. That's really, to me, what Blaine Bradford's all about. He does have some multi-sport stuff, some track times, nothing blazing or particularly noteworthy there. Also plays baseball like another Louisiana safety, Ed Reed. Much different type of player for the Destrehan native, Ed Reed, compared to Blaine Bradford. But I think this is a guy who right away is going to help Ohio State, at least on special teams, but potentially in the defensive backfield, where they're losing guys to the NFL at all times. When you have so many guys like Caleb Downs that are 3 and out, you're always going to need a steady flow of 5-star freshmen to go into Louisiana State's backyard and win this battle. Absolutely huge. Of course, LSU was involved. Oregon was involved. Texas was involved. All the heavy hitters. Is a 5-star player, but Ohio State comes out on top. Also a shout out to Tim Walton, who was involved in the recruitment as well with his NFL experience. It's a team effort to land this outstanding football player for the number 1 team in the country. Like, they needed the help.
Well, and I wanted to bring this list up real quick as we look at the top recruits in the state of Louisiana. Lamar Brown, number 1, consensus there. But then you see LSU has a pretty strong grasp on most of the rest of the top 10 here. A couple guys here at the bottom part of the top 10 undecided, but it just, again, goes to show you the significance of a pickup like this. You'd imagine LSU is not going to give up in this recruitment either. But Ohio State, I'm sure, probably feels pretty strongly about holding on to him.
Yeah, look, Lamar Brown's another one from Baton Rouge that's up in the air. He wants to play defense. We'll see. There's a lot of schools involved there. Who's just in Miami. That's not the only school involved. There's a ton of schools involved there. But this was a very, very strong year in Louisiana. I think you see all those LSU symbols. That was a priority for the staff, is to dominate in state. And you can't have everything under the top 2 spots saying LSU and then the top 2 spots saying other schools. LSU needs to win one of these 2 battles, either for Lamar Brown or for Blaine Bradford, if they want to say that they've taken back LSU. You're never going to get them all, especially with teams like Ohio State coming down to recruit. But you got to win the majority of them. They did a very, very good job in state. This is a huge blow. Let's see if they recover with Lamar Brown or potentially with Blaine Bradford himself. We've seen these go a million times. Nothing is over until the signature is on the paper, especially in the state of Louisiana.
So we've got a bit of coaching news here at this juncture of the calendar, not something that we would normally expect. So obviously that means there was some sort of scandal, some sort of investigation. We're talking about Stanford. Troy Taylor, who was relieved of his duties recently by Andrew Luck, who's leading the charge there at Stanford. And they found their replacement for this season, Frank Reich, who Andrew Luck familiar with from his time in the NFL, and a guy who has had, not great success recently in the NFL. But when you look at the situation as it's been reported, this is going to be a 1-year agreement, and college football is moving more towards an NFL sort of model that, yes, you would ideally, if you're a Stanford fan, like to have your long-term coach in place to start building this roster. But the way that things are going here, you ideally are going to already have your personnel people in place, your people in the scouting department, recruiting department. I'd imagine that, look, whoever is going to be the long-term coach is going to want to bring in some of their own people. But Andrew Luck is running this program as the head of it. And I think a lot of these decisions are going to be made in unison.
Yeah, so look, the circumstances regarding Coach Taylor's firing, I only know what's been reported. I have no insight there. Obviously, like Pete mentioned, it was unexpected as far as it's not the ideal time to fire a coach here, late March. So unique circumstances bring out unique decisions. And I think with Luck, he's saying, we got to land this plane. With the finish spring practice, we have to continue to recruit. We got to add in the portal. We have to coach the team in the fall. So a guy like Reich, he's got credibility as an NFL player. He led the biggest comeback in NFL history. For those who forgot, with the Buffalo Bills as the backup quarterback, he has credibility. Just
led the comeback in college when against Miami as well.
Maryland, the comeback kid. He's been an NFL coach. He set some records you don't want to be setting, which is he was fired in back-to-back seasons. So he's the first head coach since the merger to ever be fired in back-to-back seasons. But overall, 41-43. So, this is not somebody who struggled. He was an assistant coach with the Eagles, and they won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles as the OC. So he's got a lot of credibility. He can come to these are mature kids. This is Stanford. So he's going to come into the program, maybe steer the ship here for a year, but he's an older guy. He's not someone that necessarily is fighting for a job. And, of course, has that rapport with Andrew Luck where they could be honest with each other. They had that relationship from being coached by him in the NFL. So,
and I'd imagine because of that relationship, he can almost come in here for a year, D, and kind of assess with Andrew Luck, what does this program need? This is where it's at right now. And he can kind of just get hands-on with everything from top to bottom and say, all right, look, this is, I think, what this program needs. This is how we can win. This is what the program's strengths are. And essentially be an advisor this season to Andrew Luck while he's the coach. But as you said, kind of steer this ship along for the next year. Less than a year, technically, I would think.
And you might find the coach in the middle of that, right? We've seen that in other sports. And we just went through it here in Miami with Jay Lucas, which, Pete, you broke that news that he was signing with the Miami Hurricanes during the season as the coach. Duke was still playing. They didn't even start the conference tournaments. Yeah, you reported it. It was, of course, true, but it was done during the season because Larinaga retired unexpectedly during the season. This is college basketball, but just the idea that you can have that coach set up early, even while you're playing games, I think this kind of situation lends itself more to that, where maybe you get somebody in place ready to go. We'll see how that all works out. But in terms of this season, Coach Taylor recruited very well at Stanford, particularly that 24 class, which was a top 35 class. So he's got some players in the boat.
You've got a lot of very, very good things to sell there if you're Stanford.
Oh, of course. And then you got Elijah Brown, someone who's the biggest beneficiary at quarterback, Elijah Brown, who was billed by many as the savior of Stanford football, now replacing Ashton Daniels. He's got the reins from Atterday High School, used to winning, number one team in the country. He was rated as high as number 7 in the country as a quarterback. A lot of guys excited about him, 6'2", 205, dealt with some injuries. But he is the guy that you're hoping goes to the next level. Frank Reich, quarterback himself, quarterback coach. So maybe he can help Elijah Brown become that leader of Stanford football going forward. And then if he does that, that's as big as anything he could do as a coach. The team's been struggling clearly. So, how many 3-win seasons in a row had they had? 4 straight 3-win seasons in a row, 2 4-win seasons before that. And you look at 2010 to 2018, this was one of the more relevant programs in the country. So you've seen both sides of it. They can use a jolt. I think the idea of Andrew Luck as athletic director makes a lot of sense, as football GM makes a lot of sense, because the athletic director of Stanford's got to worry about all kinds of Olympic sports. Stanford's got a massive sports program in general, basketball, baseball, and everything, all the other sports where they really thrive. So that AD's got a full slate. Football's pretty unique. It's a monster on its own. Luck understands the NFL. He understands college. He can help from a football-only perspective, which I think is going to help this program. And he's clearly behind this whole operation to put a Band-Aid on what was a tough situation with Coach Taylor's unexpected departure.
Yep, should be interesting to follow there this year for Stanford, and we'll see. Maybe, who knows, man? Maybe Reich does an incredible job, and maybe he's the guy. But crazier things have happened, I would say. I just would think it'd be closer to what we were suggesting in terms of he's going to be the boots on the ground, the ears there for Andrew Luck, and a guy that Luck trusts his opinion at the very, very least. Obviously, he trusts him enough to run this program with him for the next year. So should be an interesting situation to follow there. Now, we will wrap things up with another recruiting story, and Kentucky landing 4-star offensive tackle Jarvis Strickland. This is a guy, we'll pull up the tape here in a second, from Paducah, Kentucky. And we're both pretty impressed by this guy. 6'6", about 300 pounds, good athlete, and a nice pickup for the Wildcats.
Yeah, shout out to Vince Marrows, the tight ends coach, recruiting coordinator, of course, offensive line coach Eric Wolford, all doing their part here on this recruitment. Michigan, Ole Miss, Tennessee, North Carolina with Bill Belichick, Louisville, a lot of big-time schools after Strickland. Kentucky gets it done, keeps him home. And when you look at the player, I went, this is the first commitment in the class for Kentucky. I went into this expecting the usual Kentucky, just mauling kind of run blocking offensive lineman. This dude right here is extremely athletic. You see him in space. You see his ability to hit small targets. 6'6", 294. He looks it. He looks lean. He looks good, but certainly athletic. His teammate, Martellus Carter, safety signee for the 2025 class. So he's already there. Of course, he's the local kid. He visited for the Tennessee game. He said, I saw the players. They were locked in and ready to play. Crowd was amazing. Everybody was tuned in. They had a light show before the players came in. He liked that. And then Coach Marrow sent him a graphic of 29 former players in the NFL, including 5 offensive linemen. So that kind of caught his attention. That's the selling point if you're Kentucky, on top of being in the local school and just the great environment and everything else, is you're saying, look, people don't look at us like an NFL factory, but Kentucky has clearly become an NFL factory. They produce quarterbacks that start games in the NFL. They produce a bunch of running backs that play a key role at the NFL level. Offensive line, defensive line, those guys come in at quite a big numbers every single year. Talk about, different positions. Right now they got a corner, and Maxwell Hairston is going to be potentially a first-round pick. So they are doing an incredible job of evaluating.
And here he is playing in high school. Here he is. He's already played at Kentucky's stadium there.
Yeah, so this is a guy who he belongs, man. Look at that pass set. Look at that size. I think this is a guy that you could see in the NFL draft in a few years because he's got the height, which you can't fix height. His weight's already good. He doesn't need to lose a lot of weight, but with his size that he has right now, the weight gain should not be anything crazy. That's easy to project. And then the athleticism you see him running, you see, run blocking, you see him pass blocking. This is a program that develops its offensive linemen. I think this is a huge pickup. Again, you look at the ratings. He's a 4-star player, and just from a rating standpoint, kind of depends who you look at on the composite, which is all the ranking systems combined. He's 407 for a low 4-star, but 247 as a number 203 player overall in the country, all positions. So 247 is particularly high on him. I tend to agree with them just because watching these clips, having seen a lot of linemen develop into NFL players and seeing what they look like at this age, he is right on track. He's got long arms. He can bend his knees. He can move laterally. He has pretty good technique. This is not a particularly raw player. Like we mentioned earlier, he's run blocked and pass blocked in high school. Sometimes you see teams that only pass or only run. They're raw in other areas. He can do both. And then the space, where you see the athleticism, you see the ability to run, see the ability to get low and hit a small target. I think he's excellent in that category, and he's going to be a huge, huge addition to the Kentucky Wildcats. They had a nice portal period. I thought, some of the guys that they added there, particularly on the offensive line. So that tradition continues. We'll see how the whole thing plays out.
First commit for this class for Kentucky, number 1 player in the state. So obviously a great start.
Start at the top.
Yeah. Would you be concerned at that, number right there if you're a Kentucky fan, understanding the recruiting cycle has been pushed up with a lot of these dates?
Yeah, and look, I think it's going to be, when you get a guy like this, you send a message to the rest of the state and you start to land some guys. They're all about evaluation. This was a battle they won, but a lot of their battles that they win are more evaluations where they just find the right guys. Sometimes those are late bloomers. Sometimes you have those guys at camps. Sometimes you see them at like Under Armour camps and you get their times and their drill work on video, and you see what they do in the 40 and their size, and those guys rise up the boards. I trust this evaluation system. And again, I'm really excited to see this team on the field because you just look at their portal class, some of these names that they've added. True Edwards, we did a video on him when he signed with Kentucky. Kendrick Law from Alabama, very talented, highly rated guy. And then 2 players, Pete, that we both thought were just awesome gets. If you recall, we made videos on both of these guys, which is Shiaz Pete, who I think was from the Sioux Nation. He was
New Mexico State kid,
a Native American background, 6'8", 320, good athlete, really interesting player on film. I think he could potentially be an NFL player. Again, same developmental system we're talking about. And then McQuise, I was saying it right, Humphrey Grace, the big kid from South Dakota. We thought he looked the part of an NFL edge rusher, 6'4", 255, really standing out in the tape we watched. So those are two guys. If you're a Kentucky fan,
yeah, I think that's it's Mike Keese.
Mike Keese. Go watch some of the videos we've done on Kentucky. We broke all these guys down because we like to stay on top of the portal. So very impressed with some of the stuff Kentucky's done. Troy Stellato, a guy that we saw here in South Florida, speedster from Clemson, who's going to add some juice to that room. But I mean, they signed a ton of guys, man. 19 in the portal for Kentucky. So we'll see how it turns out. But I'm excited to watch this program develop.
Keep it locked here on Group Chat Sports. This is Group Chat Football Live. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more updates like this about college football across the country and your favorite teams. We will have you covered here on Group Chat Sports. Like, subscribe. Thank you all for watching today.